All right, welcome back. Of course, you saw the team that will be handling SONA 2022 for us in Cape Town, that being Bongiwe Zwane Vuyemvoko, as well as Abra Barbie, Natasha Piri, Samkela Maseko, and Mzondile Beja. So a full team of SABC News down in Cape Town for us to cover SONA. In the meantime, while we're in studio here in Joburg, let's get some analysis then and what to expect from SONA then later on this evening. We're talking to political analyst, Professor Barry Hanyane. A very good afternoon to you, Prof. Always a pleasure to see you here on SABC News, sir.
Very good afternoon, Flo. Good afternoon to your viewers as well.
So of course, we need to talk about what the pressing issues this time around are. And I'm not sure if they're any different to what the pressing issues were last year. Last year, though, it was more serious around the issues of vaccines and, of course, COVID-19. We're still in that pandemic, but it seems as though everyone is kind of relaxing as opposed to what we saw last year. So I'm sure there's something new now that would be the bigger focus of President Cyril Ramaphosa this time. And what do you see, having witnessed the past, let's say, 6 months, would be the bigger sort of pressing issues that the president would then be wanting to focus on? The issue of security seems to be a big issue, no doubt, given the fact that, even the venue had to change for SONA. So I'm assuming that's something that will certainly be addressed. But what do you see as being the major issues?
Flo, I wish I had a crystal ball that would be very precise in terms of saying this is what we should expect. But rightly so, we can read quite a lot from the public discourse and public domain. And here we're informed by facts. Stats SA has cried out loud to say youth unemployment is an issue. It doesn't help to speak about these things when we pretty much drown ourselves into rhetoric. I'm anticipating that if there will be justice today served, that we will hear substance around the issue of unemployment. We will hear what possible solutions are, which are tangible, which will inform progress way forward, which I suspect we might not until such time that the Minister of Finance, Mr. Podongwane, lays his plans going forward. But then your question has a very interesting usage of the word pressing. Pressing from an anti-corruption point of view, I think the temperature is somewhat higher than last year and the year before that. And I would anticipate that he will assure us that the NPA, the SAU, the Hawks, the idea that has been punted by the Zondo Commission, that a dedicated anti-corruption institution be established, will gain traction. And not only for the sake of fighting corruption, but ensuring that there is total government commitment in terms of fighting corruption. If by the end of 2022, no high-profile arrest as well as prosecution, I think we might as well forget about reclaiming the state, as it were, and make sure that anti-corruption measures are given impetus. I mean, beyond that, GBV, I think it will gain attention as well, and all other factors that are likely to feature strongly.
I actually want to stay on the issue of anti-corruption, and it's as though you anticipated where I was going with this. Corruption was one of the major issues that were addressed last year by the President in the State of the Nation address. If we're, apart from looking at COVID-19 and the issue of vaccines, corruption was very high up on the agenda of what the president was addressing last year. You talk about these institutions, whether it is the SIU, or I can talk about the NPA for example. But like you rightly say, recommendations coming out of the Zondo Commission, and that is top of mind. We're still waiting for the third report, the third and final report into allegations of state capture. Can we trust that the president will announce clear and practical sort of steps as to how we will enforce those recommendations? And I heard you in the previous answer talking about the SIU and such other institutions that are, of course, at the hands of the president that can be used. But do you see him doing so and clearly addressing that today?
He has no choice, Flo. He has to address it. What is of advantage at his disposal is that these are matters that can run concurrently. You and me have the power today to say, here is a specific matter identified by the Commission. We have interest in it, seeing that it affects our livelihoods. However, we've received a certificate from the NPA that there is no capacity to prosecute. What does this mean? It simply opens the front door for private prosecution. That's the beauty about the system. So the sense of agency must now take shape. And one would anticipate that the total amount of money invested in the entire exercise should now bring in return in investment. And one way to do so is to make sure that justice is seen to be done.
Yeah, it's. I wonder if it's fair, to kind of look at and compare yet again to SONA 2021. But there were quite a few promises made, and whenever we're talking about SONA, there are more promises that are made. But I always wonder why we aren't talking about, look, this is what you promised last year. Let's talk about going forward. And I think the theme of this year's State of the Nation address does speak to that in terms of looking at what was promised. So we're talking, I'm specifically now talking about the issue of economic recovery. I want to talk about the issue of job creation at a point where, if we were promised a job creation last year, but right now we're actually been talking more about job losses, and many people actually having lost their jobs. Can we then be promised jobs and more on job creation if, we're actually on the opposite end of what we were promised last year?
Promises are done. That's that. No longer space for rhetoric. Here's what I would rather focus on if I was a research institute or some watchdog. I would be focusing on Mondli Ngungubele, Minister in the Presidency. His mandate is to say, let's evaluate, let's look at finding ways and solutions into the problems that government is faced with. So a little bit of monitoring there comes into mind. Does that office have the scientific instruments to deliver a report that says, Portfolio X, Minister A, you have failed us. Portfolio B, Minister 1, you have succeeded in meeting your expectations. This is what this government needs. We don't need deployment, politically speaking. We don't need jobs for pals, politically speaking. We need people who can stand before the nation and say, given the mandate that I had, this is what I have done. I have made sure there's clean water, there's proper sanitation, there's proper infrastructure. So that gap between policy and poor results can be closed a bit on the basis that that office in the presidency is able to deliver on its mandate, amongst other measures that can be put in place.
So I've actually got the direct quote, in fact, of this year's theme for SONA 2022. It's following up on our commitments and making our future better. What do you make of this? It's almost as though, the government's trying to protect itself. That, look, we are actually talking about what we promised last year. We're following up on those commitments. But how are you following up on those commitments if you've not delivered on those commitments? Or will there be, a part where they say, well, actually, we did deliver ABC, and what are those that we've delivered?
It's wanting to purport and playing into the gallery of honesty. And that can only be measured by facts. Sanitation, pit latrines in schools, basic education, quality thereof, public health, quality once again. Where are we? Can we benchmark these, not only in the region, but continent and globally? We're spending a lot of money in education. Are we getting immediate return in investment? The issue of housing, call it human settlement, which I prefer the most. Are our people enjoying comfort and security of sorts when it comes to that portfolio? We need to quantify this and come back and say, maybe South Africans are a group of happy people. We need to respond to that.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I mean, do you see South Africans as people who are generally hopeful? I certainly have seen that, but I wonder at this time, are we talking about South Africans who are indeed hopeful? I always see SONA as a sort of renewal of hope, new promises and so forth, but have we reached a point where South Africans are really actually just tired, or majority of South Africans are just tired of, or are we... is the government able to continue to push for that hope and trust in them?
Some South Africans, Flo, want to take matters into their hands, right? We're not talking vigilantism.
Yeah.
We're talking the ballot box, 1st November 2021. Let's not forget that. Huge message to the majority party. It can no longer be business as usual. If we found you to be on the wrong side, we will simply remove you. And this is the biggest lesson that post-1994 South Africans have learned all by themselves, that forever making promises does not necessarily result in change. Change lies in the hands of those who want change and who have the power of the ballot box. And that's the biggest lesson that people have learned. Going forward, 2024, what do we expect? I think there's a call once again to accelerate that movement at a time when we are facing electoral reforms, which, by the way, might even bring more headache to the majority party.
All right. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, and we'll certainly have more conversations with you later. Thanks for giving us your time, Prof Hanyane.
Thank you so much, Flo.
All right, it's political analyst Professor Barry Hanyane, and they're weighing in on what he sees or expects from SONA 2022. As of course we are building up, and we'll certainly be hearing from the President this evening, and our team indeed on standby in Cape Town. Of course, this time around it will be held at Cape Town City Hall. That's State of the Nation Address 2022. For more expectations on the State of the Nation Address, let's now